Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of SurrealEstate. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. And first and foremost, I'm going to start this off by announcing, obviously, that this is a spoiler review, just in case there's someone that's coming across this and things like, oh, maybe this is a quick review. It's like, no, I'm going to be breaking down the episode and spoiling everything. The reason why I normally don't include this, but the reason why I'm doing it with this particular case is because episode 2 was released early, both on Syfy's YouTube channel as well as on Hulu, so that's why I was able to watch it early, and now I'm reviewing it, so I am going to be putting it up early. I wasn't really sure whether I was or not, but I'm kind of thinking I will, so I'm just putting this intro here just in case someone's coming across it and hasn't watched the episode yet, and I don't want to spoil anything, so kind of putting this out here now, so you have been warned. This episode will air next week, more quote-unquote officially, but like I said, for now, it got released early, so just letting you know. So, breaking down the episode, it is interesting how we started off with like that 8 months ago situation, and the house, the moment the windows start closing, you're like, oh, that's not good. And then the house, some screaming, and then you see someone slam against the glass, blood and everything, and then the house explodes, and you see the Roman thing. Now, I was wondering, like, okay, so how is that going to relate? Well, it plays a role in the overarching aspect of this episode where Susan's, last episode was kind of like a trial run for Susan, but now she's officially part of the team. It's, trying to find that new ebb and flow because they've got their own language and their own way of handling things. Obviously, at first I was like, oh, it just seemed like it was a her and Zoe thing because Zoe didn't seem too, responsive to Susan's introduction last episode, but it's like, yeah, it's there, but it's, once again, it's like, she even said it like, right, someone coming in and kind of messing up your feng shui, and because Susan's used to running things her way of like, yeah, she's really good in the real estate game, but obviously what they do at the Roman agency is something very different, and even though she knows that, and she doesn't quite believe in all of that, she still... Which, once again, is so weird that she doesn't believe in everything, considering, like, what her circumstances are, which this episode didn't dive any more into that, but regardless, it's just interesting. But, obviously, like, she's trying to make a lot of changes. She's, like, wanting August to, it's like, oh, yeah, you do your thing of, like, investigating and stuff like that, with your tech and checking out, like, ghosts and stuff like that. Yeah, August, just show up, like... You can do that anytime, but I need people like the plumbers to come by and yada yada check out the house. Then telling Phil, like, right, you do your whole categorizing of files. We need to put it in one place so everyone has access to them. But Phil's kind of like, nah, my files are just kind of mine. And she wants Zoe to make a spreadsheet and stuff like that. So it's just the way that Susan handles things isn't copacetic with the way everyone else handles things, especially because Luke is kind of like telling her, like, right, we kind of handle things a certain way. We got to examine things, find out whether there's more to it or not. Because this involves a particular house, a family, Tom, his wife Patty, and their son Jamie, who's talking to a little girl named Cindy, which obviously no one else has seen, so she's a ghost. But obviously the terminology they throw out there is like, is she a Harvey, which is like, is she an imaginary friend, or is she a Lassie, kind of a friendly, kind of guiding type of spirit. But that right there in itself is kind of Susan's issue because it's like, right, here's lingo that they're kind of throwing around because they've got shorthand among themselves, but I'm the new member of the team, which we find out it's not like she's the first new member. It's just that usually new members don't stick around because it's not the easiest job to be a part of. But once again, like, Susan's so used to handling things a certain way, so she wants to kind of get in there, do what she needs to sell the house, but Luke is like, no, we got to figure out this ghost or whatever the situation and figure out what it's about, because he can immediately sense from Jamie that, oh yeah, there's something going on here, like there's a secret he's keeping. But immediately they make you recognize that, like, Cindy's creepy because she's kind of like, right, if you leave me, we're supposed to be family. Like, I don't like your dad because he's going to try and like make you move and everything because his mom's got a new job. And she's like, I'm gonna jump from the roof and I'm gonna land and I'm gonna break all my bones and there's gonna be blood gushing out everywhere. Which I'm like, you're a ghost, so that wouldn't happen. But obviously she's like trying to terrify him into not leaving her. So I was like, man. And then like she just gets creepier and creepier and scary over the course of the episode. But even like when Susan runs into her, she's pretending like, oh, I've got this toy that's up there I can't get. And it's like, it's creepy because it's like she's crying, but there's also like the way her mouth is moving, she's looking like she's laughing at the same time. I'm like, that's so disturbing. Like, this is one of those things of like, right, like kind of the little girls from The Shining. I mean, to be fair, like, little kid ghosts are always like the most terrifying thing of like, yeah, that's because little kids in the horror sense are always going to be the spooky ones. You can get like, you know, an Omen type of situation. You can get an Orphan type of situation, or like I said, you can get a Shining type of situation with the twins and everything, or Red Rum, just stuff like that. Kids in those horror situations are already creepy, but this little girl just like amps that up, especially when Susan goes into the attic, gets attacked by a raven that immediately disappears. So it makes you wonder, is it just like, because we still don't fully know the scope of what ghosts are capable of in this universe. Like, well, I mean, they're able to like mess with your head because it seems like they can make you see things while also doing things. They can interact with the world because at first she made it seem like Patty and Tom, like Tom coming towards Patty with like the lawnmower, and then Patty standing there with the clippers, like, you know, and then all of a sudden like Jamie's looking back and they're like going back to what they were doing. So either like she was able to mind control them in that moment and then made them snap out of it, or she just made Jamie see that. But then she immediately squishes his hamster, like, right, because I need to teach you a lesson because you were talking to that dude Luke about me, and I told you, like, if you talk to anyone about it, like, I'm gonna make you suffer. Like, you have to pay a price. There's consequences. So, you know, we're family and everything. So it's like that went from like, I mean, it's, to be fair, it starts off at like a 60. It ramped up to a 300 real quick of just how creepy that little girl is. But like, yeah, like I said, we don't fully know the scale of and scope of what ghosts are capable of, but it does seem like they can make you see stuff that's not really there, manipulate things around you, like obviously Megan's house, like the fire last episode, and just obviously throw stuff at you, but just the full extent of like, right, it's not just like objects like that. They can interact with you and even hurt you. But maybe it's also because Cindy's something else and she's more powerful. So what her circumstances, because I'm sure there's probably a grading scale to like the supernatural stuff, whether it's like just a straight up demon, ghost, or whatever. Like, I'm sure there's a scale for all of that, because we heard a term like doughboy, and then we find out what LRGs are, that being Little Red's granny. It's supposed to be like, you know, oh, like the wolf, the big bad wolf ate Granny and then pretended to be her type of situation. Like, right, here is this thing that's pretending to be a little girl, but there's a lot more to it. Luke could definitely see that and felt it, especially when he was kind of antagonizing her, and she kind of shifts her face a little bit because she's like, oh, I'm so lonely, and he's like, bullshit, and she just kind of like warps her face and like sharp teeth and everything. But Susan over and over again kept being like, oh, this little girl. And it's like, no, that's not a little girl. Because she has her own view on things. It's like, it's so interesting because she's fighting the experts. They've been dealing with this a little bit longer than you, but I guess because you don't fully believe in it, despite your experiences and stuff like that. Once again, you met a girl last episode who had telekinesis, but I guess you're able to kind of let that slide. Like, the supernatural side of stuff, I guess that's, like, for whatever reason, it's completely out there, which I don't understand. But I guess it's because Susan has her own world, her own view. I guess regardless of anything, it's just that human nature part of people not wanting to believe anything and doubling down in that belief. And it's like, right, your world, the way you view the world is just purely from your own point of view, and you have a hard time seeing it from anyone else's. So Susan has a hard time, like, recognizing, like, the way, like, Luke handles things, because she's like, right, Luke wants me to call in all the time, like, I can't make any actions without letting him know, because she wants to, like, set up stuff to sell the house, but Luke is like, no, we can't do that until we deal with the little girl. It's not just the unfinished business, which obviously that came up last episode with Megan's house. But this isn't just, well, that ended up being a different circumstance, but it's like, right, it's not just about unfinished business. This thing in particular is a monster that's trying to eat Jamie and feed off of his life force and stuff. So, once again, more ghosts can still, I think, fit that bill, but I think it's more demon than ghost to a certain extent, especially when you see what Cindy really looks like. But it's just like I said, Susan's just had her way of handling things, and even her mom had to be like, right, like maybe you should, instead of like being so like super critical of these people, like give them a chance and open up your heart to them, like, you know, because it's like, you know, just because you have short patience when it comes to people, like when people don't live up to your standards, you kind of like, I mean, it's just like, oh, what's wrong with them? And they're feeding off of that too, because it's like, right, like you have your quote unquote perfect ways, because she's like, yeah, my ways aren't perfect, but it's better than the way everyone else handles it. And she's like, oh, I said that out loud, didn't I? So she even kind of hurt herself, and that made her change her approach to everyone. Like, obviously, like with Zoe, it's like, right, you here's this particular coffee, I know you like it a certain way. It's like, here, I know you don't worry about the spreadsheet. Like, you have some ideas about things, you kind of shoot it my way, and I'll kind of spread that around to everyone else. And Zoe appreciates that. She kind of does the same thing with Phil. It's like, hey, don't worry about the spreadsheet. You know, your files are your files. I'll make it work somehow. So kind of being a little more acceptable, kind of like easing herself in a sense of opening herself up to the way they run things. But even Luke kind of apologizes that, you know, he kind of threw a lot at Susan, because we tie it all back to the house that exploded at the beginning. And for Roman, it's like, that was it's like a little stuff here and there. And for him, he believed a spirit that's like, oh, I'm just lonely and I want a family. And that spirit ended up not only killing that family, like not just blowing them up, it sliced him. He's like, yeah, we found like the bodies like split up in 11 pieces and burned. Like, it went above and beyond to hurt them. And it's like, we failed that family. I failed that family because I underestimated what we were dealing with. I looked at it as just like, oh, this is just some innocent thing. And it's like, no, these things bear a lot more teeth than we're giving them regard. I mean, that doesn't mean eventually they won't meet something that is more on the Casper side of things, but it is, just because it presents itself as Casper doesn't mean you should take it at face value. Because Susan was kind of saying, right, it's a little girl, like, she's dead. Why would she lie? The rest of the team goes, like, in particular, Zoe was kind of scoffing, and then the rest of the team left while Luke kind of explained it, because they know firsthand what it's like to deal with a ghost. Like, when you believe a ghost that, like, lies and so much death followed, an entire family's death is on them. So, and, you know, Roman takes the most responsibility, because I think for him, it's like, this team is well versed in ghosts, but I think in particular, it's like, I'm supposed to be the one that's the most on top of it, because this is kind of my whole operation, and I'm the one that kind of has that sixth sense to a certain extent. So I think that's what pushes him to be like, no, it's more on me than it is anyone else. But right, he's going to be a little bit more open to Susan, explaining everything. Like I said, explaining what a LRG was, and, you know, August is coming up with a device that can work, but the monster needs to reveal its true form before the device can work. So, and obviously Tom and Patty end up firing Luke because, like, he wasn't doing his job, because that's the thing of, like, they don't believe in all of this stuff and getting so pissed at Luke and everything, but it's like, how does that necessarily correlate to your son climbing on a roof? Like, you know, there's something a little off there. Because, like, at first Luke was suggesting, like, right after all that was done, being like, yo, maybe you should go to a hotel. And he's like, oh, for my son to end up on a higher roof. Like, how about you just focus on what you're supposed to do and just do your job? And it's like, they sit and know something's not right, but their brain tries to rationalize it, and so they're not willing to, you know. And even Roman brings that up later on. He brought out a last episode of, like, right, there's going to be people who are skeptics about what we do, but at the end of the day, like, they don't have to believe in the ghosts and everything. We just need them to believe in us, that we are going to do the best thing for them and their family. And since I brought up Megan and everything, I guess that's going to be a little bit more of an overarching story than I thought it was. I mean, you have Susan kind of pointing out, like, oh, you're kind of into Megan. It's like, no, she's married and everything. And then her husband, Brock, who's, like, standing outside in his underwear, and he kind of does the whole thing of pointing to his eyes, like, I see you. And it's like, right, there's nothing between us. I don't know if he's open, like, Megan knows that that house is connected to his mom, or at least there is a connection there. I don't know if he's opened up to the team or even Susan about that, because he talked to Susan a little bit about his mom, but the only person he opened up to complete, or at least to a lot more, was Megan. Maybe that speaks volumes, because Phil had asked him last episode, like, where'd you even find this house? It's like, I've been keeping an eye on it in a while, so I don't think they're even aware of the connection. So they're still in the process of selling the house, so they're staying there for now, and obviously, you know, I love that he was taking pictures, and Megan's like, "Are you taking pictures with my house?" He's like, "No, I'm not taking selfies. It's just the houses can actually do stuff when your back is turned." She's like, "Well, like what?" He's like, "No, I've seen it do this, change colors, that. I've even seen a situation where the chimney's grown like 6 feet while my back was turned." And she's like, "I don't even know what to believe and what not to believe in that. Like, you never know what's a joke and what's Luke being actually serious, you know?" So. But I think that is going to continue to be a thing. Like, his mom is connected to the spirit world, so I don't know if it's necessarily that house, even though, like, whatever happened to her happened in that house. You know, I'm curious, is it going to be a seasonal thing? Like I said, is that going to be an overarching story that we're going to pop in and back with the Donovan house? So we probably will see more of them as the season progresses, because, like, that house in particular has a connection to Luke, but it probably dealing with that while also dealing with like new houses that they have to deal with. Maybe we'll see kind of how ultimately everything kind of shakes out. I hope we don't get, when it comes to the Megan thing, I'm a reference something. I'm going to reference the movie. I'm not going to explain what the reference is. I hope it doesn't end up like a Odd Thomas. I've never read the books, but I saw the movie, the 2013 one with Anton Yelchin, R.I.P. I forgot, what was her name, like Stormy or something, like his girlfriend. I'm blanking on her name. I shouldn't have referenced. Just there's interesting reveals at the end of that movie. Once again, because I've only seen the movie, I've never read the novel that it's based on, plus the series of novels. But I'm wondering if it's going to be a thing with Megan that ends up like that. I'll leave it at that. If you've seen the movie or you get what I'm referencing, because I think the movie and the book have the same storyline. Like, I'm sure they changed stuff with the movie, but I think the book ends the same way too. I could be mistaken. But I hope it doesn't, because it's a bit of a depressing ending. Then I'm wondering, like, will we have something like that with Megan? Like I said, I'll leave it at that. You know, when the time comes, I'll probably explain a little bit more about what I was kind of referencing. If it comes down to that. If it doesn't, then it doesn't matter. But I did like that Susan ended up being the one to talk to Tom and Patty to kind of get them to calm down. It's like, right, she's like, me and you guys, we're wearing the same jersey. You don't believe in all of this. I don't either. But the fact of the matter is, Luke is a good guy. Yeah, he's a bit of a flake, but he's a good guy. Trust him. He's going to do what's best. You know, trust that not only is he going to sell the house because he's really good at it, but he's also good at dealing with when something is wrong. And so he invites Cindy to play a game, and she's like, how do you move the little horse? And he's like, no. Like, the fact of the matter is, are you just going to keep playing kid games that you're good at? You can't play any adult games? And he's so antagonizing it, being like, like it makes a move, and he's like, no, are you stupid or something? He's like, first, I thought you were this horrible, like this lost little girl with terrible fashion sense that needed help moving on. Then I thought you were some badass demon that sucks on human life or whatever, but now I just see like, you're like Casper's not so friendly niece or something like that. I'm like, he's talking mad shit, and then it ends up getting aggravated and reveal its true form, activates the device. Like, what it necessarily did, because it looked like it got sucked into the machine, but I'm wondering, like, is it kind of trapped there, or is it just kind of broken down and broken to pieces, and its energy was absorbed and it's not whole? Like, I'm not quite sure, like, what the device. I think if you probably go back, it probably does a better job of it does a job, it explains like what happened. Like, August probably explains like what the device did, but I didn't remember. But still, that was kind of dealt with, and ultimately they end up selling the place. So, but Susan and Luke are at a better place because Susan is really good at what she does, and she ends up like the way she's talking to the people later on of like, yeah, I've got this settled on like a price, like making sure that they get a really good price for the house, the Quincy family. So, interestingly enough, Susan's like, right, I've got plans. I'm going to have dinner with my mom. It's like, you can come alone. He's like, no. He's like, family time is really important. Like, he's like, you never realize that. I never realized that until after my dad's until my dad died. So it's something you kind of really have to focus on. So, which we do see at the ending. In the end, he is playing, mini golf with his dad, and it's like, oh, like things between you and that redhead. He's like, I always had a soft spot for a redhead. It's like, no, like me and Susan, that's just a colleague. And he's like, oh, you're a good boy, Luke, but you've always had terrible luck when it comes to women. He was like, really? You're going to be the one to tell me that, Dad? He's like, you should know better than anything, considering, like, I kind of almost break down every second week of May, every second Sunday of, like, May or something like that. I wonder, is that in reference to, like, is that when his mom disappeared? Like, either, like, when she left him when he was young, or when he found out about those circumstances. I wonder, have they talked about that any at all? Probably not. Maybe it's just a subject where he's like, hey, I just want to talk to Dad. I'm not trying to... I mean, like I said, for all we know, they might have had those conversations. This is our first time getting a peek into that, so maybe we'll get to see more of that going forward. Like, I guess, like, his dad technically has unfinished business. I'm curious, is it going to turn into a little bit of a supernatural thing or not, where they're like... I guess it just depends on the ghosts and everything, because I was about to say, like, well, maybe we'll eventually meet good ghosts and stuff like that, but, like, meeting his dad is kind of an example of that, but... the whole thing in Supernatural is the longer a ghost remains in the world, the more likely their unfinished business will turn into hate and they'll become a vengeful spirit. So I wonder, do the rules apply in this case? Like, his dad's been around for years. But I mean, I guess it also works like The Frighteners, which, God, that's a good movie, a really good movie. I haven't watched that in years, but I've seen it a couple times. It's a really good damn movie. Also, when you go back and realize, like, man, look at this star-studded cast. That's wild. Like, The Frighteners didn't always work like that, because a lot of those ghosts hung around for a while, and that never happened to them necessarily. So I don't know. Every continuity when it comes to ghosts and stuff like that have their own rules and everything. So once again, curious to learn more and more about how things operate in this world. I'm sure there probably will be still some bumpy roads, but I think this was kind of supposed to iron out the teamwork to a certain extent. Obviously Susan is making an attempt, and Luke and the others are making an attempt to kind of keep it cohesive and copacetic. I don't think we're going to see Susan kind of knowing the circumstances of everything that's going down as still, which I think that was kind of like, you shouldn't have done that. Like, even, like, at least she was kind of at first being like, no, we can't, like, no matter how much money's being thrown, like, the fact is Luke was kind of like, once again, why can't you just listen to it? Because he is technically your boss, and he's like, yo, when I say, like, don't bring people here, like, we need to... But she still kept being like, oh, it's a little girl ghost, it's not going to be that big of a deal. And it's like, well, that little girl ghost still convinced a little boy to climb on top of a roof, and that could have been bad. I mean, hell, she was even maniacal about it, because it's like, oh, here I am flying and laughing because you thought I was actually going to jump, ha 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 ha. So... we also got introduced to Phil's husband, which him and Susan hit it off. Part of me, I didn't even think about that till just now when I said that, like, oh, Phil's husband. And it's like, right. Probably as a priest, I mean, for one, like, the whole celibacy thing, I'm sure that's an aspect of that. But also, it's like, I mean, it depends on the religion. Like, it's just like, obviously, gay marriage isn't, like, smiled upon by some. Not saying the entirety of, like, any faith feels that way. It's just certain groups and people in certain faiths don't smile upon that. So I'm like, is that part of the reason why he left his faith? Because it was kind of like, oh, you're kind of against me being in love with the person I'm in love. Like, maybe sexuality became an issue. Because I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I guess it kind of makes me think of, like, Fleabag and Hot Priest from, well, Fleabag. Granted, different circumstances, but, like, the whole, like, not being able to just kind of have a relationship thing because your relationship's just supposed to be with God. I don't know. Maybe there's other, like, aspects that attribute it to all of that. But maybe this is kind of the first steps to all that. But, I mean, maybe we'll be, because he's kind of like the repair guy, so maybe, because he did say, like, right, we get the, that Luke gets the family discount. I thought it was just like, I was like, did he say that because, like, right, you're friends and you helped him with the supernatural thing, or was you just good buddies? And it's like, no, that's what it was about. So that was interesting. So, like I said, just a lot of interesting things all together. I'm really interested to see where things take us going forward to the next episode. Once again, I am recording this early because the episode dropped early, so it's going to be 2 weeks before I see the next episode. I'm sure, because I doubt they're going to drop episode 3. You never know. Sometimes they do that. But I'm sure usually that's after the episode is already aired. Sometimes they put stuff up early, like they put the second episode up. Who knows? Syfy will just kind of do whatever. Sometimes they just kind of do whatever the hell they feel like and want to. So we'll see. But I'm really excited to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.